SQL Server is an enormous product that's grown over its many years of existence to take on a variety of roles in managing and analyzing the data of organizations of any size. As a response to the question, why SQL Server? Microsoft's marketing machine presents this answer, and I quote, Microsoft SQL Server is a comprehensive database server and information platform offering a complete set of enterprise-ready technologies and tools that help people derive the most value from information at the lowest total cost of ownership. Enjoy high levels of performance, availability, and security. Employ more productive management and development tools, and deliver persuasive insight with self-service business intelligence, or BI. Still quoting, a complete and integrated platform, Microsoft SQL Server brings it all together to get more value out of existing IT skills and assets, increase the productivity and agility of IT departments, and quickly build flexible, innovative applications. End quote. Okay, so that's a pretty broad, optimistic statement, but it does function as a kind of mission statement for the latest release of the product, without providing much detail. It's also a statement that's rich in buzzwords. We love how everything is in the cloud these days. But these are no idle boasts. Since SQL Server 2005, more than a decade ago, Microsoft has added features that make SQL Server usable in more scenarios, from the smallest desktop application to the largest enterprise. And it now is a leading contender for any organization's data server needs. Even as a mature server product, some 3 decades old, the original product that would become SQL Server was developed jointly by Microsoft, Sybase, and Ashton Tate and released in 1989. The new version, SQL Server 2016, has a lot of new features that make it useful in ever more scenarios. It's an incredibly complex product, and here you'll get a high-level look at what SQL Server is all about. So SQL Server is a large and complex product with many available additions and many different components, and many separate tools. I'm going to begin by reviewing these additions, the components, and the tools. It's important to understand the features available in the different editions of SQL Server so that you can select the right edition for your needs without paying Microsoft any more of the expensive fees for the product than you need to. Okay, so let's talk first about editions. SQL Server 2016 is available in a number of distinct editions that differ in their features, definitely in their price, and the licensing terms. The editions fall into 2 broad categories: server editions and specialized editions. The server editions are for general database use for medium and large database servers. The specialized editions have specific uses, either through their capabilities or their licensing terms. And all of the editions are available for both 32-bit and 64-bit processors. All right, so let's take a quick look at the different SQL Server 2016 editions. All right, the primary server editions. So there's 2 main editions of SQL Server that support applications from a centralized relational database. The first is the Enterprise Edition. This edition has comprehensive functionality to support the largest organization and the most complex requirements. This is the highest price edition, no surprise there, and it includes every available SQL Server feature. So you get it all in the Enterprise Edition. And then the other primary server edition is the Standard Edition. This is a less expensive alternative for smaller and medium-sized organizations, where it's often used for e-commerce. And it's also used for data warehousing and line of business solutions. This edition is missing several advanced features related to business intelligence and high availability, but it has all the core database, reporting, and analytics capabilities. Now, I need to make one note at this point. Microsoft is constantly shuffling the editions around and repackaging them to maximize revenue and to fit features to business scenarios. For example, SQL Server 2012 had a Business Intelligence Edition that supported both corporate BI needs as well as self-service data analysis by end users. Various subset of these features are now in most of the editions of SQL Server 2016. So that's how Microsoft has shifted features around. And there was a Data Center edition back in SQL Server 2008 that they subsequently rolled into the Enterprise edition. Okay, so make sure you look at the current information for the editions that you're considering using. And one other note about the primary server editions: the Enterprise edition is a superset of the Standard edition, in that it includes all of the Standard edition's features, plus a whole lot more. Just keep in mind that Enterprise edition has it all. All right, then there are the specialized editions. The first of these is the Developer edition. And that's the one that I'm using in this course when I show you different demonstrations of features. This has all the features and the capabilities of the Enterprise edition. It's very inexpensive, and it's included with most Microsoft Developer Network or MSDN versions. But it's licensed for development only, not for production, and includes some hardware and software restrictions. You can upgrade a Developer edition for production use, though, by moving to Standard edition or moving your databases over to Standard or Enterprise edition, whatever works for you. So this is a great way to get started with developing applications, but then you're going to need to move to a different edition for production use. Then there's a Web edition, and this is really pretty specialized. This is designed for highly available websites and website hosting companies to allow them to provide SQL Server database support for websites hosted in shared servers. So if you have a website and it's on a shared server, you rent or lease SQL Server capability from your hosting company, then they're probably using the Web edition of SQL Server 2016. Pretty likely. So you have to be a hosting company to obtain and use this edition. All right, then one of the more interesting editions is the Express edition. This is a free desktop version of SQL Server that's integrated with Visual Studio. It also has another version called Express with Advanced Services, which is also free and additionally includes SQL Server Management Studio Express, full-text search support, and the ability to view reporting services reports. Both of these Express editions limit some of the resources that you can use with them. They're really designed for single applications in a small work group. All right, then there's the Compact edition. And this was formerly called, quite a while ago, the Mobile edition. This uses a different database engine from the other editions, but it supports Transact SQL queries that are compatible with the other editions that I've been talking about. It can also use merge replication to synchronize the data with other editions, databases that are hosted in the other editions. And this edition runs in a very small RAM footprint and is intended for use in mobile devices. All right, and then there's the Evaluation edition. This is a free version of the Enterprise edition, so again, it contains all of the features in the Enterprise edition, but it's limited to only 180 days of use. It's a great way to kick the tires, if you will, to see if SQL Server is the right product for your organization. Now, as you decide which edition that you're going to deploy and use, both during development and then in production, you're going to want to get really into the detailed documentation for what features are in each edition to make sure that you get the edition that you need for your uses, again, without paying Microsoft more money than you need to. It'd be really tempting to deploy the Enterprise edition, but you're going to be spending thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars more than you might if you really just need the Standard edition. Okay, so for more detailed information on the features that are supported by the different editions, you'll want to see the technical documentation for SQL Server on Microsoft's website. They have detailed comparisons of the various editions as well as the limitations of each edition. Keep in mind that the Developer and Evaluation editions really, strictly speaking, aren't separate editions. Instead, they're the Enterprise edition with licensing and other restrictions. So in the documentation, they aren't always listed separately. So just keep that in the back of your head. But they are separate downloads that you can get. And then one warning about these SQL Server 2016 courses. The courses explore a lot of features in SQL Server, not all of which are in all the various editions. Before you do a lot of planning around any features, Be sure to check the features supported information that's online in the technical documentation in order to make sure that they're in the edition that you have to work with. Or use that information to determine what version of SQL Server 2016 you need to deploy. There are some huge differences in the money that you have to pay for the different editions, and the licensing specifics are pretty complex. In fact, there are consultants whose entire business is helping companies navigate the licensing complexities of Microsoft Server products. So there be dragons here, as the old map said at the edge. So just be careful. You need to do some research in this area. Okay, so with that, let's start talking about some of the server components. SQL Server 2016 is comprised of a number of distinct components. The most commonly used one is the database engine, which provides the core services for storing, processing, and securing data. The database engine, which is accompanied by tools for creating and managing relational database objects, also supports several SQL Server features. Amongst others, it includes replication. This is the ability to generate, synchronize, and manage multiple copies of database objects, including copies containing only a subset of the full data. So this is really nice because you can have multiple instances of SQL Server on different servers, on different devices, and keep the data synchronized between them. This is real handy for example, people have to go out in the field, collect data, they can go back into the office at night, synchronize their local instance of SQL Server, the data there, with some enterprise central database. So some really nice scenarios involved in replication. It also has full text search, which is a special indexing engine and query syntax for finding text data that meets specified criteria. It goes well beyond the substring matching kind of features that Transact SQL has, much more powerful. And then it also includes Service Broker, which is a message-based communications platform for creating distributed applications. This is one of the key features of SQL Server that enables its use in SOA or service-oriented architecture kinds of applications. Okay, then in addition to the core database engine and its tools, SQL Server also supports 3 types of business intelligence services. The first is analysis services. This includes the tools for creating and managing online analytical processing, or OLAP, and data mining applications for extracting patterns and knowledge and information out of the data stored within SQL Server. And then there's reporting services. That's the second BI application. This includes server and client components for creating, managing, and deploying tabular, matrix, graphical, and freeform reports. Reporting services is also an extensible platform that you can use to develop report applications. And then the third of the BI applications is integration services. And this is a set of graphical tools and programmable objects for moving, copying, and transforming data. So it's a great way of moving data from text files, CSV files, comma separated value files, Excel files, and so forth into SQL Server, or to export it to those different formats. Okay, so there's a lot of different server components, and each of these components that you see listed here are incredibly complex products on their own. Now, to help manage all this, SQL Server includes a rich set of tools, graphical tools, that you can use to work with data and manage the server. These tools are accessible from the Windows Start menu in a default installation in the Microsoft SQL Server 2016 item. Now there's a number of tools, but there are a few that you're probably going to find the most useful and are likely to use every day. The first one is SQL Server Management Studio, or sometimes abbreviated SSMS. And this is an integrated environment for accessing, configuring, managing, administering, and developing all the components of SQL Server. Management Studio combines the features of Enterprise Manager, Query Analyzer, and Analysis Manager that were included in SQL Server 2000 and earlier into a single environment. And then, new in SQL Server 2016, SSMS, or Management Studio, is a separate download and install. It's not part of the core installation anymore. And then SQL Server Data Tools is an integrated development environment for analysis services, reporting services, and integration service solutions, all the BI stuff in SQL Server 2016, that's hosted in Visual Studio. It includes templates that provide access to rich designers for building business intelligence projects, as well as templates for creating entire databases and other database objects. And by the way, the Business Intelligence Development Studio, or BIDS, B-I-D-S, which was part of earlier versions of SQL Server, is no longer included in SQL Server 2016, at least not with that name. It's been replaced by SQL Server Data Tools, which is more closely integrated with Visual Studio and provides far more features than BIDS ever did. BIDS was a revolution in its time, and SQL Server Data Tools takes that a whole new level. Really is a great set of tools, particularly for developers, and particularly if you're familiar and have used the Visual Studio development environment. All right, then another tool is the SQL Server Configuration Manager. This provides basic configuration management for SQL Server's Windows services, as well as its server protocols, and client aliases. There are also configuration manager tools that provide similar configuration services for reporting services, data quality services, and master data services. SQL Server Profile is another great tool. It provides a graphical user interface for monitoring an instance of the database engine or an instance of analysis services. So if your server is performing poorly, queries are taking forever to run, SQL Server Profile is a great tool to turn to in order to see what's happening on the server and identify any kind of bottlenecks and problems, things that are happening that slow down your applications. And then another handy tool is the Database Engine Tuning Advisor. This helps create optimal sets of indexes, index views, and partitions to improve database performance. So once you've used SQL Server Profile, see that too many queries, too many complex queries are hitting the database, you can't do anything about those queries because of their nature, say that you can't, then you can turn to the Tuning Advisor in order to create indexes that may speed up how quickly those queries can access the data within your database. Okay, there's also a lot of documentation and samples. SQL Server 2016 contains documentation and samples that demonstrate how to use SQL Server features and functionality. These are great resources to explore now when you're just learning SQL Server, as well as to refer to in the future. It's such a complex product that when I'm working on a project that involves SQL Server 2016, I'm constantly looking at the documentation because there's just so much to know and so many details, I can't remember it all. Okay, so it's not humanly possible. All right, so you want to become familiar with the SQL Server technical documentation. This is a very extensive set of web pages that contain the core documentation for SQL Server 2016. And then Microsoft also provides SQL Server samples, including both code and sample databases. And these are sample applications for the database engine, analysis services, reporting services, and integration services, as well as other features in the entire product. And the databases are really nice. We're going to be using those throughout these courses because they really do a nice job of demonstrating some of the features of SQL Server 2016. Microsoft also makes available a great set of tools called the SQL Server 2016 Feature Pack. This is a collection of what they call install packages that provide additional values for SQL Server 2016. The pack includes 3 groups of tools. The first is redistributable components that make it easy to deploy pieces of SQL Server to other machines, such as client components. As you're going to see, SQL Server is highly networked. It has network support for various protocols built in, and so you can deploy different pieces of it to different machines across the network and create a very complex, very robust, very performant environment for your databases. There's also add-on providers that extend the functionality of SQL Server features, such as additional data providers, different ways of accessing the data that is stored within SQL Server. And then there are a number of backward compatibility components for when you need to implement a feature from older versions of SQL Server. So this is part of the wonderful support that Microsoft makes available for backward compatibility. Now, in some cases, the feature pack includes a standalone installer for features in the main installation program for SQL Server. And that lets you install features independently on computers without the full version of SQL Server installed, or with its client tools installed. One handy component of the feature pack is an upgrade advisor that analyzes instances of earlier versions of SQL Server in preparation for upgrading to SQL Server 2016. And that lets you identify changes that might affect the success of your upgrade. There are also tools for helping you migrate data from Access, MySQL, Oracle, and Sybase, as well as command line utilities and data connection tools. And the feature pack includes a lot of tools that are worthwhile to explore, at least so that you're familiar with what's included when you need a particular feature. You will want to be aware that Microsoft regularly adds new features, so it's worthwhile to occasionally check back to see what's available. Over the years, the feature pack has grown to a ton of tools and utilities. Check it out anytime you encounter something that SQL Server by itself can't seem to do, but sure seems like it should be able to do. There's a decent chance that you'll find something that supports that within the feature pack. Now, Microsoft changes the URLs fairly regularly for pretty much all across its site. But if you search the web for SQL Server 2016 feature pack and add download to it, so in Google Bing, then that seems to find the feature pack's download site pretty reliably.